Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 170. We have an article tonight from the Daily Beast, and it's talking about one of the co-conspirators possibly suing Jeffrey Epstein's estate. I guess Ghislaine Maxwell set a trend, huh? She comes out and says she's suing the estate. Now, an alleged co-conspirator might be suing the estate. All of these people who were involved in Jeffrey Epstein's criminal organization, the criminal enterprise, now believe that they were victimized. That's what they would have us believe. They would have us all believe that they were victims now. All right, well, let's read the article and see what the article has to say, and let's see if any opinions are swayed. Like I said, it's from the Daily Beast. The author, Kate Bricklet. Is one of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged accomplices suing his estate for damages? Earlier this month, Epstein's accused co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, filed a lawsuit against his $600 million estate, saying she was receiving death threats and that the financier, pedophile, promised to always provide her with monetary support. Isn't that nice, huh? You just make all kinds of claims, Well, I'll tell you what. The King of Siam in the old days said that I'm part of his family and I should have some of his fortune. You make whatever claims you want, all right? The Sultan of Brunei told me that he's going to drop off $150 million later on tonight. Can you make sure that occurs? It's crazy on its face. All of a sudden, we're supposed to believe Ghislaine Maxwell. All of a sudden, we're supposed to feel bad for Ghislaine Maxwell. We're supposed to look at her like she's a victim in all of this, like she's just some poor innocent that got swept up in all of this. Sorry, that's not going to occur. We know what you were up to, Ghislaine. We know, and the authorities know too. For whatever reason they have been dragging their feet, that's their business, I guess. But don't think that the people don't know, because everybody has seen the evidence. We all know the deal. Now, a mystery woman who spent time in Epstein's orbit is also pursuing a case against the estate, saying her reputation has been ruined and that she's virtually bankrupt from having to defend herself against false accusations relating to Epstein's sex crimes. Now, that's pretty vague, a mystery woman, right? I can't have too strong of an opinion one way or the other, but if it's one of the core four, well, I don't even know what to say. If it's one of the core four, then there's going to be a big problem, because those girls, the ladies in the core four, have no business playing the victim. The only one that you can make a case was victimized out of them girls, in my opinion, would be Nadia Marcinkova. And like I said, I'm torn about what her punishment should be if it's proven that she took part in all of this, right? So the only one out of the core four who I believe deserves any sort of leniency, maybe, or half the sentence that the other ones get, it's Nadia Marcinkova. If it's any of the other three who have come out and they think that they're going to sue over this, and they think we're going to feel bad because they're virtually bankrupt, or that they had to defend themselves against false accusations, really? So what about the survivors? What about the girls who for years had to fight off all of these charges that they were drug addicts or liars or crazy or all of the above? What about them? We're just supposed to feel bad for people who these survivors are accusing? Sorry, I can't do that, and I won't do that. Again, we don't know exactly who this person is. She's just going by Jane Doe right now. So all of this is pure speculation, obviously. What I'm saying is, if it's any of the three, Leslie Groff, Adriana Ross, or Sarah Kellen Vickers, who are coming out and suing this estate, that's beyond the pale of gross. But it's not shocking, considering what their best friend Ghislaine Maxwell did, right? The plaintiff, identified only as Jane Doe, quietly filed a federal lawsuit on March 17th. She alleges Epstein sexually abused her starting when she was 22 years old in the early 2000s and destroyed her reputation and career prospects. Now, we can do the research and try and pinpoint who it is, but I'm not going to do that. Her name, she wants to go under Jane Doe. That's what she filed as. And if it's not one of these core four, if it's somebody else, then I'm not going to try and put them on blast and find out who they are. We'll just call them Jane Doe, like this article does. And when I first started this podcast, I wasn't naming any of these girls by their name. I was calling them Jane Doe 1, 2, 3, etc., until they started coming out in the papers more prevalently and saying who they were and stuff like that. Because I wasn't there, right? And if this isn't one of the core four, and this is just some girl that was in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit, well, I don't want to, jump on her and criticize, because I don't know, right, who this person is. My point is, if it is one of the core four, which it's more than likely one of them, right? More than likely. If it's one of them, it's gross. The complaint filed in the Southern District of New York seeks justice for the sexual crimes perpetrated against her by Jeffrey Epstein over the course of many years and for the abuse, manipulation, and exploitation she suffered at his hands. The lawsuit is about Jane Doe claiming her power, becoming a survivor, not a victim, and getting restitution for the sexual crimes perpetrated against her. The complaint states, okay, well, again, I don't know who this person is. I don't know if it's one of the core four or somebody else. So I don't really have much to add to any of that. Let's see who this is. Let's see what happens with the lawsuit and go from there, right? Doe is represented by the law firm of Kaiser Sauerborn and Mayer, which also represents Jennifer Arauz, who says Epstein started sexually abusing her when she was 14. That's kind of interesting, right? So they already are representing Jennifer Arauz, and now they've taken on this Jane Doe as one of their clients as well. So that kind of gives me pause. Is it a co-conspirator, like the headline suggests, or could that just be, more of the clickbait same? I mean, this is a good article, don't get me wrong, but that might be a bit of sensationalism in the headline, because I don't know if Kaiser Sauerborn and Mayer would represent this lady as well as at the same time as representing Jennifer Arauz. What if this is one of the core four? I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to me, and hopefully, as we continue to read the article, maybe it will start to make sense. Because, like I always say, I haven't read this article yet. We're reading this for the first time together. I like to make sure that my reactions are visceral, and I like to make sure that you're not getting any canned statements from me. No BS. This is just, as I'm reading it, this is the way I feel about what I'm reading, and I try and look between the lines usually in these stories, because there's a lot of that, especially in this case. But when we're going through it like this, these are just my reactions as we read this together. So I haven't studied this or, dug deep into it, etc., but my gut says that the law firm would not represent Jennifer Arauz as well as one of the core four. But again, who knows? This is such a crazy case. Anything is possible. One of Epstein's facilitators recruited Arauz outside a performing arts high school in Manhattan. The lawyers who filed Doe's complaints, Daniel J. Kaiser and William H. Kaiser, did not return messages left by the Daily Beast. So I'm guessing they were calling to get a little context about what we were just talking about. That would be the next step, you would imagine, right? Call and try and get some context about who this person is, what her role was, if she was one of the co-conspirators with Epstein, as far as, in the very top, the top echelon, the core four. So I'm guessing that's what the Daily Beast was contacting them about, and I would guess that the lawyers they have no desire to speak to the press as of yet. Doe's complaint did not include a state or country of residence. Still, some details about Doe's lawsuit are raising eyebrows, in particular because the allegations seem to match up with at least one of Epstein's alleged co-conspirators. So maybe they'll get into the meat of it here. If they talk about if they talk about it being one of the co-conspirators here, great. but I'm not going to try and put the pieces together right here on the podcast right now and, out whoever it might be. I'll let you do that for yourselves. I'm sure it's it'll be pretty obvious as we read the article who it might be. And again, there's only a few options, right? If it's one of the people who were a co-conspirator or somebody who was close to Epstein, we only have 4 or 5 ways to go, so it shouldn't be too hard to figure it out. If this complaint was filed by one of his co-conspirators who played an outsized role in Jeffrey Epstein's devastating abuse of minors and girls that were of age, by the way, let's not minimize that, all right? Just because somebody might have been of age doesn't make it any less. Now, it's dastardly to do it to children, of course. It's the worst crime imaginable. But it's, abusing anybody is unacceptable and the sort of thing that you must be held to account for. And Jeffrey Epstein was a serial abuser. He didn't stop at just young girls who were 14, 15, 16. 18, 19, 20, if you looked young, that was right in his wheelhouse as well. Played an outsized role in Jeffrey Epstein's devastating abuse of minors for over a decade and profited handsomely, including owning a company affiliated with Epstein. It is a brazen abuse of our civil justice system, said Sigrid Macaulay, a partner at Boyes Schiller Flexner LLP, who represents multiple survivors of Epstein. But above all, it is a shameless act and disgraceful insult to the real survivors. And that's exactly my gut reaction to this is that as well. It's disgusting, right? If it's one of these co-conspirators, it's absolutely beyond the pale of gross. It is, words can't explain how much of a slap in the face something like this is to the survivors. They've already been victimized by these people, right? They suffered through that. They came out on the other side. They became survivors, and now a co-conspirator is trying to victimize them again by acting like they deserve some money from this estate, essentially stealing from the girls who were abused by Jeffrey Epstein, and if it's one of the core 4, perhaps by the same person who's trying to push the lawsuit now? How in the world is that okay? As Sigrid Macaulay says here, that's an absolute disregard for our system and a black eye to it. According to the lawsuit, Doe was recruited into Epstein's sex trafficking operation almost 19 years ago. That would be 2001. Jane Doe was a naive and uniquely vulnerable 22-year-old when Epstein and Maxwell first preyed upon her, the complaint says. At least one known co-conspirator would have been 22 in 2001, and she's also defended herself against accusations from Epstein's victims for years. She has been named as a defendant in multiple victims' lawsuits since 2008, and she was granted immunity in Epstein's non-prosecution agreement inked with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami. Again, they're trying to paint the picture for you here. I'm not going to take it a step further and put the pieces together and, tell you who I think it is. Everybody on this that's listening to this podcast it's well within their ability to do that for themselves. I think it's kind of obvious who they're talking about here, but I'll hold back my opinion of that until we find out for sure. But it's certainly looking like it's one of the co-conspirators, right? One of the core 4. In that secret document, the feds agreed not to pursue charges against any potential co-conspirators of Epstein, including, but not limited to, Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, or Nadia Marcinkova. Those accusations of abuse are deeply disturbing. Again, these are the core 4 that we've talked about. We're in the middle of doing a series on them right now. We just got done doing episode 3 recently. Episode 4, that's going to be out on Sunday, and there'll be one episode after that. That'll be episode 5, and that will cover the whole core 4 as well as an overview in regards to what they did when it came to Jeffrey Epstein's operation. So, again, I don't want to jump to any conclusions here because what if it isn't one of the core four, right? I don't want to go scorched earth yet, so I'll use the caveat that if it is one of the core four, I'll keep saying that, because if it is one of these ladies, Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, or Nadia Marcinkova, boy oh boy, that's just it's beyond gross. And I don't even know how the court could let something like this occur. I honestly don't even know how any judge could let something like this occur. All right, so let's read the accusations about what she says, what Doe says happened to her at Epstein's hands. And again, if we're talking about Nadia Marcinkova here, look, I know that she was involved in this operation. I know that she had a leadership role in this operation, but I also have empathy for a girl who was sold by her parents to a man like Jeffrey Epstein. A girl who was groomed from a very young age and was reared in an environment where this sort of behavior was okay. It was just the way things went around Jeffrey Epstein. So Stockholm Syndrome is a real thing, folks, right? And I have to have some empathy for Nadia Marcinkova. So if that's who this is about, if it's Nadia Marcinkova who is filing this suit, then I will reserve the harsh evisceration that I would give to somebody like Sarah Kellen or Adriana Ross. Because I believe that Marcinkova, while I think that she should definitely be punished for her role, I think that her punishment should not be as harsh as the other three plus Ghislaine's. So obviously I know there's some people out there that might feel differently about that. For me, though, I understand that the Stockholm Syndrome situation is real, and it was like a cult-like following around Epstein for girls like this, girls that were groomed from a young age. So I have to have some empathy for her, and I have to try and reserve the scorched earth policy I usually have when it comes to people involved in this case, because that whole entire relationship is so complex. And I've said it once, I'll say it a million times, I am not a psychologist. I'm not capable of breaking down the dynamic within that relationship, and I won't sit here and act like I am. But I know for sure that if it is Marcinkova, that it should be looked at under a different scope than if it's one of the other three. My opinion, obviously. The lawsuit states Epstein would repeatedly enter Doe's room and get into her bed while she was sleeping, and then fondle or penetrate her with his fingers. This guy was so sick and depraved, folks. He was such a disgusting individual. Jane Doe was paid in part to be sexually available to Epstein, the complaint adds. Epstein controlled every aspect of her life and dominated her psychologically. The lawsuit says this pattern of sexual abuse took place in the U.S. Virgin Islands, New York City, London, Paris, and Palm Beach, Florida, as well as Epstein's ranch in New Mexico and on his airplanes. Okay, so what we can take away from that is it's somebody that traveled with Epstein a lot, right? Okay, that's established. Somebody that was on all of his properties at one point or another, that was on the plane with him. So we know for a fact that all of the gals traveled with him quite extensively, but we know that Sarah Kellen Vickers and Nadia Marcinkova traveled with him a lot, especially considering Marcinkova was a pilot. According to the suit, Epstein frequently directed Jane Doe to turn her head back during their sexual encounters, telling her that he did not want to see her face. Epstein allegedly laughed at Doe after he performed a sex act on her in early 2012 at his Manhattan townhouse. This guy was a sadistic predator. I mean, how he wasn't caught and thrown underneath the jail early in the mid-90s when Maria Farmer came out and told this guy, and told everybody what this guy was about, how he didn't get arrested then it's, like I said, it's one of the one of the mysteries for the ages. There is no plausible explanation that doesn't reek of involvement of people at the higher levels. There's no normal person gets away with something like that where the police don't even show up to talk to you after you're credibly accused. That doesn't happen for normal people like me or you. In or about January or February 2012, Epstein grabbed plaintiff by the hand while at his New York City residence and took her to a small room on the third floor, the complaint says. It was a room with 2 chairs in it. He sat her down, pulled her pants down, covered her eyes, and used a vibrator on her. Epstein laughed afterwards. I don't even know what to say about this stuff. Every time I read stuff like that, it makes me ill. I can't even imagine somebody being as sick and twisted as Jeffrey Epstein, roaming around amongst us, sharing our air. This is the kind of shit you read in a Thomas Harris novel, right? Something that he would have... So one of the characters in Silence of the Lambs or something. This isn't like real life. I swear to God, we're living in a simulation. Pandemic raging through the world, Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirators running around doing whatever they want. What reality am I in? Kellen, 40, is now married and traveling the world with her husband, 36-year-old NASCAR driver Brian Vickers. Must be nice, huh? Must be nice to have to... You're so close to being arrested and prosecuted that you had to get a Dershowitz immunity deal dropped over you. And now you're living the high life married to Brian Vickers, the NASCAR driver? Boy, it must be nice, huh? Vickers' Instagram page shows the pair in Italy, Greece, Japan, and Austria in recent years. The couple, who tied the knot in September 2013, is linked to addresses in North Carolina, New York City, and Miami, Florida. Shocking that they have 2 places of residence that are still in epicenters where Epstein and his associates hung out, huh? Where they did their business from. I'm sure that has nothing to do with that, right? More coincidence in this case. This is just all coincidence, folks. Sarah and Brian Vickers did not return messages for comment. Neither did Darren K. Indyke, one of the executors of Epstein's estate, who also represented Sarah's one-time interior design business. As the Daily Beast previously reported, Indyke also did work for other women associated with Epstein. Boy, isn't that funny, huh? Isn't that funny how that works? The same lawyers? The same lawyers, huh? Indyke and Khan, the same guys that we should trust to administer this money and to distribute it to the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein, his 2 good buddies who were also on the payroll to protect the co-conspirators. These are the people we're supposed to trust, huh? Kellen was 22 when she joined Epstein's world. Tracy Schmaler, then a spokeswoman for Kellen, told CNN last year. When she met Epstein, Kellen had been married at 17, divorced, and cast out of the Jehovah's Witness community in which she had been born and raised, Schmaler said. Schmaler said Epstein sexually abused Kellen for years, and that she continues to struggle with the trauma of her experiences and has chosen not to speak publicly at this time. On Wednesday, Schmaler told the Daily Beast she was no longer representing Kellen, despite saying hours earlier that she'd check in with Kellen's legal team. Look, I don't even know what to say about any of that stuff. Sarah Kellen, all of these core 4, I don't even know what to say about them at this point. They're totally stunting now, right? All of a sudden, they're the victims in this case. Why did they go and visit Jeffrey Epstein when he was behind bars 70 times combined? Why didn't they rat him out? Why didn't, the second he was locked up, why didn't they come forward and rat him right out? Sorry, none of this stuff from Sarah Kellen Vickers doesn't, I don't believe her. I'm sorry to say it. I do not believe Sarah Kellen Vickers. Not at all. Sorry. It just, she provides no evidence, nothing. Just all of a sudden now, because she's under the microscope, because the walls are closing in on her, all of a sudden she's a victim. All of a sudden Ghislaine Maxwell, she's a victim. Sorry, I'm not buying it, folks. I am not buying it. Like I said, besides Nadia Marcinkova, I'm not buying any of this other horse shit. Marcinkova, 35, is a licensed pilot and flight instructor. The ex-model runs an aviation consulting business called Avaloop, which is registered to the Manhattan building where Epstein housed women. She previously modeled for MC2, the agency founded by Jean-Luc Brunel, who was accused of procuring victims for Epstein. Well, we know not. I don't even... accused? I think it's pretty much fact at this point. Where is Brunel? If this was wrong, if this was a lie, wouldn't you be screaming from every rooftop you could get your feet on? Wouldn't you be looking for every platform or every outlet that would give you a second of their time and plead your case? You don't hide. You don't run away to Brazil. You don't drop off of the map. It's not an innocent man we're talking about here, folks. While Marcinkova, who now goes by Marcinko, wasn't charged, Palm Beach police identified her as an Epstein employee who repeatedly participated in sex with underage girls. One survivor told cops that Epstein claimed to have purchased Marcinkova from her family and that he bragged he brought her into the United States to be his Yugoslavian sex slave. Bam, right there, folks. That's what gives me the pause with her, right? And I've come across some people who are not willing to give her a bit of a break when it comes to sentencing time, if it ever gets there. But it's an argument that can be had, right? I'm not saying that I'm 100% right here, or that what I say is, the word and it's the word of God. It's not at all. There's definitely room for interpretation here, and there are people who are much more hardline than me when it comes to Marcinkova. I understand that completely, and I know most people usually expect fire and brimstone when they're talking about, me and my opinions of these people, but I try and look at everything in its own. I guess what I'm trying to say is I look at everything as its own unique situation, right? So with each one of these women who are part of the core four, I looked at all of their cases individually as well as the collective. And I factored in a bunch of different things when I was doing my research. And while it is certainly a cult-like situation, the only one that I came away feeling even a bit of empathy for was Marcinkova. And the more I've researched, the more that point has been driven home for me. So again, I can totally see that some people might not see it that way. Totally understandable. And the argument can be made that she deserves the full brunt of justice, the same as the other core four. And that's definitely a debate that can be had. One victim told cops read that last year, Marcinkova's lawyers told CNN that, like other survivors, Nadia Marcinko is and has been severely traumatized. She needs time to process and make sense of what she has been through before she is able to speak out. I'll never sit here and tell anybody what their timeline should be after they've suffered trauma, especially, obviously, if what we hear is true and she was sold to Jeffrey Epstein, this lady certainly has some trauma that she needs to deal with, certainly should sit down with a therapist if she isn't already. She should definitely sit down with a professional and help her navigate through all of this stuff, because it's bad news. I can't even imagine. I can't imagine being sold by my parents to some guy coming to America and being involved in all of this shit. Crazy. Absolutely, positively insane. One of her attorneys, Eric T. Dunbo, told the Daily Beast in an email, Nadia is eager to join the other survivors in speaking out about what she has endured. She wants to express her compassion and support to those who have also fallen prey to Jeffrey Epstein's pathologically controlling and abusive behavior. Unfortunately, she is not yet able to comment publicly. And that's where I get agitated, right? He's dead and gone, Nadia. He is dead and gone. Come forward. Be the first one of the core four to come forward and show that you're remorseful. Show that you're sorry. There's no other way. Because if that doesn't occur and the law is forced to bring you in via subpoena or warrant or something like that, I don't know how much sympathy or empathy you're going to get. And I don't know if you deserve any at that point, because you have a chance right now, Nadia. You have a chance to come forward and tell everybody your story. At the very least, tell the prosecutors your story. Don't let this be something that, destroys you any more than it has already. You can come forward and be the first one, and you can show people that even though you participated, right, even though you were involved in this criminal enterprise, it was against your will almost. You were groomed for it, and now you know better, and it's time to come forward. And unless you do that, Nadia Marchenko, you're just going to be one of the other core four, unfortunately, and you're going to have to face the full wrath of the government. I would think that if anyone's going to come forward and speak to the authorities and tell their story, it would be Nadia Marchenko, right? She seems like the likely one. And unless she does that, though, well, she's going to face the same scrutiny as the other three inside of the core four, and what little empathy people have for her is going to go by the wayside, because now's her opportunity. This is the window. This is her chance. Leslie Groff, 53, served as Epstein's secretary since at least 2001. A spokeswoman for Groff told the Daily Beast that Groff has not filed a lawsuit against Epstein's estate, nor was she a victim of Epstein's sexual abuse. We know that Groff wasn't his type. She was older. Groff was more of the clerical Mavis, the one who was in charge of all of that kind of stuff, making sure that everything ran smoothly around the office, blah, 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 blah. She was somebody who was an executive assistant, right? She was involved with other tasks, according to her. But she certainly didn't fit the bill as somebody Epstein would sexually assault. With that said, she is an enabler. She is guilty of facilitating his abuse of these children, and she is 100% part of this criminal conspiracy, in my opinion. In a 2009 deposition, Epstein's pilot said Groff worked out of an East 66th Street office, the same building where Epstein kept young women. Today, she's a married mom living in New Canaan, Connecticut, and denies facilitating Epstein's abuse. We don't buy that here on the Jeffrey Epstein Show. We just recently did our episode about Leslie Groff, and we read an article from her local paper. Nobody's buying it on this podcast, Miss Groff, that you didn't know what was going on. You were another one with the keys to the kingdom. You were another one that had all of the secrets. As an executive assistant to Epstein, Leslie worked as part of a professional staff that included in-house attorneys, accountants, an office manager, and other office staff. Leslie's job included making appointments for Mr. Epstein as directed by him, taking his messages, and setting up high-level meetings with CEOs, business executives, scientists, politicians, and celebrities. Oh, so you mean his other co-conspirators. Gotcha. So you're establishing our case for us, huh? Because everybody you name there's somebody from that walk of life who was involved with Epstein and with this criminal trafficking ring. So you're not doing yourself a service by mentioning these people as you're trying to, weirdly flex about the kind of company Epstein kept, as if these people couldn't be involved in stuff like this. Where we've learned that these are the most likely people to be involved in something like this. That's right, I said it, the most likely. At no time during Leslie's employment with Epstein did she ever engage in any misconduct. But several survivors, including Jennifer Araz, who named Groff as a defendant in a lawsuit against Epstein's estate, say Groff typically scheduled his massages. Again, directly and credibly accused, yet she is not arrested. How is that possible? How is that okay? How does that pass the sniff test? It's an embarrassment. A civil suit by Anastasia Doe, who was 14 when Epstein started abusing her, alleges Groff was one of Jeffrey Epstein's most trusted employees and would schedule Anastasia's visits to Epstein's New York mansion. Of course she was. Why else was she making all that money? Why else did he give her that Benzito? It wasn't because she was a fantastic personal assistant. I'm sure there are plenty of those on Wall Street. In fact, I know they are. But yet she's making $200,000 a year? That's a whole hell of a lot of money to schedule meetings. She wasn't making that money to schedule meetings. Come on, folks. She was made that was protection money. That was money that Epstein shelled out to all of his close associates, all of his close allies, so that it was another layer of protection when the time came for Epstein to face justice. He knew it was coming eventually, so he surrounded himself with people like this. Meanwhile, another Jane Doe alleges Kellen and Groff often asked Doe to bring other girls with her to Epstein's home, and that both assistants routinely paid her. Doe is believed to be minor victim number 1 in the New York indictment against Epstein. Right here is the case. In one paragraph, they make the case. Let's remember that when they went after Al Capone, they threw the whole kitchen sink at him. And what did they get him on? Tax evasion. Do you know why? Because they were motivated, and the prosecutors weren't effing around. In this one paragraph that we just read, there is enough evidence there to bring these people in, and at the very least, folks, at the very least, question them under oath. Juliette Bryant, who was 20 when Epstein exploited her, mentions Groff and Kellen in her own lawsuit too. Groff helped Juliette get a visa, passport, and airline tickets so she could leave South Africa to become a New York model. Bryant accused Kellen of sending her to Epstein's room to be sexually abused during a trip to the U.S. Virgin Islands and forcing her to be photographed nude for Epstein in Paris. Not only was this occurring in America, folks, this was an intercontinental sex trafficking ring that spanned the globe, and they had the reach to do it. They had planes, they had money, they had friends in power who were involved, and you see the cover-up in real time as we add article after article to the catalog. It's unbelievable what these people were up to. For her part, Ross is keeping a low profile in Florida with her husband. The 36-year-old former model who went by Adriana Muchinska came to the U.S. from Poland in 2002. When her deposition was taken in 2010, she said she was pursuing a bachelor's degree in accounting from Florida International University in Miami. Flight logs indicate Ross was on Epstein's private plane with Bill Clinton. Again, Bill Clinton's name comes up, and I'm surprised, honestly, that the Daily Beast even mentioned it. I'll give them their props for that. Seems like a lot of publications like to steer clear of the whole entire Clinton aspect of this, but as you all know, I am not going to do that. I think Bill Clinton was a big old enabler. I think Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein were a lot closer than Bill Clinton likes to let on, and I think that Bill Clinton has a lot to answer for when it comes to this case. Ross has never spoken publicly about Epstein's crimes. When the Daily Mail approached her outside of her church outside of her church last August, a man believed to be her husband said, "You don't know anything. It's not for you to make a judgment. You don't know anything about it." "No, I'm sorry, but we do know a lot about it. We've read the documents, bro. We've read them documents. I know you want to be protective of your wife, but I hate to be the one to say it, but you got some pretty bad taste, my dude. Getting with a girl like this, what could possibly be wrong with you?" Epstein's butler, Janusz Banasiak, claimed Adriana removed computers from the pedophile's Palm Beach mansion before cops executed a warrant in 2005. Mr. Berman, are you listening? Are you listening right now? They removed evidence from a crime scene. They hid evidence in an ongoing criminal conspiracy. They received funds from ill-gotten gains. And this is all before we even talk about their involvement in the sex trafficking ring. How are they still walking around? How come they haven't been arrested? Mr. Berman, are you there? Hello? Are you at work, sir? Can we see some movement, please? According to a 2010 deposition, Banasiak also said he was responsible for paying girls sometimes. "I get a phone call from Sarah or Adriana, and they mention that such a girl show up at the house, and I should give them money," he testified. As Palm Beach police investigated Epstein, they were also ready to charge Kellen too. A probable cause affidavit filed in May 2006 stated Kellen could have faced 4 counts of first-degree unlawful sexual activity with a minor and 1 count of lewd and lascivious molestation. Both of those charges were felonies. Sarah Kellen Vickers is a victim, huh? She's somebody that we should feel sorry for? Sorry, I don't feel sorry for you, Sarah Kellen Vickers, and I have a sneaking suspicion that most people listening to this podcast do not feel sorry for you either. Investigators said Kellen kept Epstein's Rolodex of underage girls and called them whenever Epstein would be in town. She allegedly met the girls in the kitchen, then brought them upstairs to a room with a massage table. She left the girls alone with Epstein, who would masturbate and sexually assault them. How much more evidence is needed? How many more little girls have to come forward and say this before the authorities kick their ass into action? What are they doing? What could they possibly be doing? Why are you coming out making statements about Prince Andrew not cooperating while he's all the way over in London and out of your reach for now, when you have people like Sarah Kellen Vickers, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, and Nadia Marcinkova right here at home for you to go after? I would just love to hear your strategy, sir. At some point, I would love to hear you come out and let us know what is going on in that office. I mean, this is the SDNY we're talking about, the same office that took down the mafia, for Pete's sake. Yet they can't get rid of a few gals that were involved in a sex trafficking ring? Makes you wonder why, folks, doesn't it? In his affidavit, the late Palm Beach detective Joe Riccari stated, Sarah Kellen coordinated and aided in the recruitment of minors to frequent Epstein's house so that sexual services were provided to Epstein, scheduled the said minors to return to the work for Epstein, secured their appointments for the purpose of sexual activity and lewd and lascivious acts, and arranged the bedroom for said minors. This is the police officer, the detective, telling you this. This isn't me making it up. This isn't me sitting around eating mushrooms or some peyote and going on a wild trip and hopping on the podcast and saying, hey, this is, this is what I think on my crazy peyote high. No. This is what the detective said. This is in his report. This is what he wanted to do. And he was denied by the prosecutors. Again, ask yourselves why, folks. When one underage girl named Jane Doe and her mother sued Epstein, along with Kellen and teenage recruiter Haley Robson in March 2008, the complaint described Kellen as an integral player in Epstein's Florida scheme. Again, these are court documents. This isn't just shit that was thrown at the wall. Nobody just jumped onto 4chan and found this. This wasn't someone passing around a chain letter. These are court documents and statements by very serious investigators, very serious people. And you want me to believe that Sarah Kellen Vickers is innocent? You want me to believe that she had no part in this, that all of these people are lying, and Sarah Kellen Vickers is telling the truth? Sorry. The victim, who was 14 when Epstein abused her in 2005, stated Kellen laid out massage oils and told her that Epstein would be in shortly. Another victim, LM, said Kellen was Epstein's lieutenant who arranged for transportation for girls as they were often too young to drive themselves to and from the mansion, according to a December 2008 amended complaint filed in Palm Beach. The lawsuit singled out Marcinkova, too. And it's interesting that LM said Kellen was Epstein's lieutenant. I've been saying that from the beginning, considering the way I have it structured. I look at it like it's the mafia. It's the easiest way to explain it. And with that being the case, we know that 100% Kellen was a lieutenant, a capo. She was definitely somebody who was in a leadership role and who was helping keep this whole entire thing on the rails. Nadia Marcinkova also served as a recruiter and helped Epstein satisfy his criminal sexual desires by, on occasion, directly participating in sexual abuse, the complaint states. Epstein's former butler, Alfredo Rodriguez, testified in a 2009 deposition that Kellen instructed him on how much cash to pay the girls who massaged Epstein, and we know what massage means for Epstein. Sarah would tell me who to pay and how much, and that's the way we work, Rodriguez said. This is a whole entire criminal enterprise, folks, right here laid bare for us to see. How is there no arrests? I know I'm beating a dead horse when I keep saying that, but I have to drive the point home. I have to drive the point home because it's so ludicrous. In 2010, a survivor named MJ alleged Epstein and his associates ran a criminal enterprise and included a RICO case statement with their lawsuit. I never even knew that before. This is the first time I'm hearing of that, but whoever MJ is, right on, MJ. Your lawyers know what's up. This is a RICO case. If I ever saw one, every single one of these girls should be attaching that. Every single survivor should attach a RICO case to this. It's like the light at the end of the tunnel for me here. I mean, are you kidding me right now? In 2010, a victim named MJ alleged Epstein and his associates ran a criminal enterprise, and it included a RICO case statement with her lawsuit. Epstein, Kellen, and Marcinkova all took steps to discourage the girls from reporting these crimes to law enforcement, including making cash payments to the girls. Bro, I don't know anyone else who's been talking about this being a RICO case the way we have been here on this podcast, almost from the very first podcast, all the way back in, I don't know, August or whenever Lee and I started this crazy adventure. I've been talking about this being a RICO case since then. And the reason I know about RICO cases is because I've seen them up close and personal. I've seen how the federal government reacts when there's RICO involved. I've seen how hard they charge. I've seen how they go after people. And to read that right here, that the survivor, MJ, attached a RICO case statement to her lawsuit. Again, look, we learn new things every single day, folks, on this podcast and on other podcasts, and when we read these articles and on YouTube videos that are covering this case. There's something to be learned every single day. And even somebody who is locked into this case like myself reads an article like this and finds something out like that. And I think it's very important, and I think it's important that the RICO aspect of this doesn't get enough play. It doesn't get enough airtime. And I would love to ask Mr. Berman why this is not, they haven't filed RICO statutes. In January 2017, Sarah Ransom sued Epstein and members of his inner circle, Kellen, Maxwell, Groff, and someone named Natalia Malyshev. An amended complaint filed under a pseudonym Jane Doe 43 called Groff an integral part of the illegal venture and enterprise, who coordinated visits between Epstein and the various young females used for sex. Again, we're getting closer here, illegal venture and enterprise. Let's just call it what it was. A criminal conspiracy and an ongoing criminal enterprise. That's what it was. There's no reason to pussyfoot around that. There's no reason to try and finesse that. That is exactly what it was. I've been calling it that from the very beginning since this all started, and I'm telling you folks, this is going to end up as a RICO case. And when it does, when one of these prosecutors decides to grow a pair and drops the RICO hammer, it's going to be a whole new world for these people. Ransom suit called Kellen a recruiter who maintained Epstein's sex schedule in order to ensure that he was not without young females for any extended period of time. While Epstein and Maxwell developed a sophisticated system of sexual abuse, Kellen and Groff carried it out for years in exchange for significant pay benefits and protection from prosecution, the complaint alleges. Again, I said the same exact thing. That's how this works. That is how this works. Epstein and Maxwell developed the system, and then Kellen and Groff and Marcinkova and Ross were their lieutenants who they were given the game plan, right? The coach enacted the game plan, and the players had to go out and play the game. And that's exactly what we saw here. In their answers to Ransom's complaint, Groff and Kellen pleaded the fifth. Like in every other case, that's all they did is plead the fifth. Every single one of these core four members pled the fifth. After Epstein killed himself in a federal lockup, allegedly, last August, more survivors began to file claims for damages against his estate. One lawsuit filed by Mary Doe sued Epstein's estate and Kellen under the name Sarah Vickers. Kellen has not responded to the complaint, records show. Well, isn't that nice? It must be nice to not be able to, to be able to pick and choose what you respond to. I mean, you can just go through life and, people sue you, but since you're friends with Jeffrey Epstein, no big deal. Be able to just skate right by, no big deal. I got a whole cadre of lawyers that handles that. Boy, it must be nice, huh? Mary Doe alleges Epstein began exploiting her when she was 16 and living in New York as a refugee from a war-torn country. Mary Doe attempted suicide multiple times as a result of Epstein's sexual abuse, her lawsuit states. I wonder how many of these gals that we have never heard from or heard of have tried to commit suicide or were successful in the attempt. It's not a very comforting thing to think about. It's not a very pleasant thing to think about, but I think it's important. I think it's important that the nameless get named, and I think it's very important that the nameless also get justice. Kellen, the complaint says, would summon Mary to his Manhattan townhouse, order her to give him massages, and subject her to sexual acts, the severity of which increased over time. Kellen also allegedly purchased Mary new underwear from Victoria's Secret. Purchased, huh? I'm sure that they had those on lock. I'm pretty sure that his buddy Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein, who was in charge of his money, by the way, was very capable of supplying a pair of underwear from Victoria's Secret to whoever he wanted. Kellen once witnessed Epstein forcing Mary to perform oral sex on him, the lawsuit continues. In late 2005, after being sexually abused by Epstein yet again, she heard Epstein shout to Kellen that Mary was the best. I'm not gonna say what that says. It's a sexual act. I'm not gonna use that term here on the podcast. Shout to Kellen that Mary was the best. Starts with a C, ends with an R. Mary was mortified and ashamed, and in that moment suddenly saw the truth. She was not even a human being to Epstein. She was an object. The lawsuit, which alleges assault, battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, says Kellen is liable for aiding and abetting Epstein's actions. Yeah, no shit. No shit she is. Kellen's name also came up twice during a federal hearing last August when U.S. District Judge Richard Berman allowed more than a dozen survivors to speak before he closed the deceased Epstein's criminal case. Jeffrey is no longer here, and the women that helped him are, said one survivor, Teresa Helm. My experiences with Ghislaine Maxwell and Sarah Kellen, and they definitely need to be held accountable for helping him, helping themselves, helping one another carry on this system. And she is 100% right about that. They need to be held to account, folks. They need to be brought to justice, all of these people. And look, Sarah Kellen Vickers, if you're out there listening, come on this podcast. Go on to the radio program. Go on to a news program, and let's talk about it. I'll give you some time. Any one of the core four, I will give you time on the podcast to explain your side of things. But instead, you hide. You duck behind. You plead the fifth. You wait for some super powerful lawyer to exploit some loophole to make sure you don't get busted. Well, that's over. You got your one get out of jail free card. That ship has sailed. Now you're in the deep water with the sharks. Let's see how you hold up. Because I'll tell you what, ladies, the walls are closing in. Don't count on the COVID-19 outbreak to give you any quarter. Don't count on this story going away. And do not think that for one single moment we're going to relax or stop until justice is served. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at Bobbycapucci at protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI at protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. If you're not following me on there, you should definitely do that. I post a lot of updates on there, and everything I post on there is in regards to the podcast and the show in general. So I'm not going to clog you up with any sort of crazy nonsense. All right, everybody, I will be back tomorrow, and we're going to do it all over again.